We're pleased that you are here, and I hope you are, as I am, looking forward to Dr. Guy Tsafnat's talk about AI interactions, a topic of significant interest these days. Let me introduce him briefly before turning the virtual floor over to him. He brings together primary experience in computer science and AI with over a decade of experience in digital health and specializing in the intersection of AI and evidence-based medicine, including evidence production and clinical decision support. His total career spans over 20 years of innovation in both academic research and entrepreneurial ventures. He's the inventor of the Piano Research Automation platform that grew out of the research of his computable evidence lab at Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia. I should add that it is 6 a.m. in Sydney, Australia at the moment. In 2018, Dr. Tsafnat founded Evidently, his 10th startup to commercialize and continue innovating new AI and automation for evidence production. He also founded the International Collaboration for the Automation of Systematic Reviews, which is in its 7th year of bringing together clinical researchers, computer scientists, systematic reviewers, editors, and others from academia, government, and industry. He's a fellow of the Australia Institute of Digital Health, an associate editor of JMIR, which is the Journal of Medical Internet Research, and a senior member of the editorial board of the Journal of Biomedical Informatics. Dr. Tsafnat's talk will be very, very relevant to the goals of MCBK and introduces key challenges we will face as we prepare for the inevitable future where AI will be widely used in healthcare. So, Guy, thank you so much for being with us today, this afternoon, this morning, whatever, and we look forward to your talk.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. Well, good morning, everyone. I will just share my screen. All right. So good morning. So we'll talk a little bit about AI. And if you don't know that the AI has now been unleashed on the world, then you really shouldn't be here, I think. But it has. And before we really talk about it, there's a couple of base assumptions that we should agree on before getting started. So a question, should AI be used routinely in every aspect of medical practice? The answer is that this is too late, right? It already is. It doesn't matter. We don't need to talk about this. Should it be regulated? That's irrelevant. It's there. It's been, whatever it is, regulated or not, it's already used. Again, it's too late for this. Is it ethical? I don't see the value in this. It is what it is, and it's there, and everybody's using it. So ethical or not, it's used. So the question really is, how do we prepare for the deluge of AI that is coming? And we know it's coming. So let's start with a biochemical analog to AI. So, and I'm talking about drugs. So the drugs and AI have a lot in common. Primarily, they're both very complex systems that only a handful of people around the world really understand how they work. For everyone else, it's magic. But even those people, those handful of people, will have a really hard time predicting exactly how these systems are going to behave in the wild. That actually is quite important, because that prediction of how they behave is really the issue here. They're both regulated in the same way. They are trial and control environment. They are subject to a manufacturer who has a conflict of interest. They are tested on individuals who are ideal for that use case that they're made of, rather than in the wild. And then after regulation, post-market, there's regulation of there's surveillance, and then there's regulation for safety. Okay, so let's look at an example of a drug-drug interaction. So there's a drug called methotrexate, which is used to treat cancer. It's used to treat autoimmune diseases. And it works by killing very specific cells that include certain cancer cells and autoimmune cells or immune cells. There's another drug called probenecid, which is used to remove uric acid from the kidneys, and that helps treat gout and other similar disorders. So you have two drugs with completely different pathways, so biochemical pathways. They treat conditions that have nothing to do with each other. They work on very unrelated biological systems. One works on the immune system, one works on the kidneys. And yet, somehow, surprisingly, they do interact. You take them both together, you could either get too much toxicity from one or reduce the efficacy of the other. So, and how does that work? It's that it's methotrexate is getting cleared from the body through the kidneys. The other drug affects the kidneys, and so they interact. In hindsight, it's obvious that they do. Of course they do. They both interact through the kidneys. But it's only obvious in hindsight. Fact is, when those drugs were produced, nobody predicted that, and we only had to find that through surveillance after market access has been approved. Now, going back to AI, there is a large number of AI already on the market. And of course, we've lowered the barrier of entry. You don't need to know programming languages. You don't need to know how to set it up in a cloud environment. All of that can be done today with prompts. And the result is that we expect a lot more applications of AI to percolate throughout medicine. So let's look at what is at the moment available this is from the Cerner marketplace. These are all the applications that are available. Well, not all of them, but all of these are available on the Cerner marketplace right now. And that's a lot of applications. But what we expect that to go maybe tenfold now that AI is much simpler. And we're in the development phase, but this is coming. So similarly, I'm sure with Epic and other systems, there are marketplaces like this where a lot of AI are available. And that's just to show it's not an issue of Cerner. It's an issue of how many applications are out there that could potentially interact in ways that we cannot predict at the moment. So going back to drugs, how do we detect an interaction between two drugs? Well, we're doing this using statistics and surveillance. So it means we need two drugs that are given together to the same person at the same time, many times. And we need the interaction to be clear. We need the side effects to be obvious. And then we can discover these sort of interactions. But what if we have 3 drugs interacting in a particular way? What if we have 5 drugs interacting? And these are almost impossible to detect because we're never going to have enough people who get these exact 5 drugs, who get exactly these, the same side effects that it would be incredible to find something like that, such a complex interaction. Even when somebody gets, all 5 drugs at the same time, it's quite a rare event, statistically speaking. Now, with AI, this is very similar because while we're maybe not prescribing them to individuals, but they do affect care. Just like with drugs, each one of these AI looks different because they've been developed by a different vendor with a very different goal in mind. And it's going to be with hundreds of AI. Nobody takes 100 drugs at the same time. But with AI, we're going to be using hundreds, and we're going to be using them all the time. We're sure that we can have interactions. In fact, just like with drugs, if you give somebody 10 drugs to take at the same time, and these exist, you can be sure that at least 2 of them interact, but we don't know. We just don't have any evidence for that because the signal is so weak. And with AI, it's going to be the same. With hundreds of AI being percolating throughout the health system, they'll be interacting in ways that we cannot predict. We know they will, but we just don't know how. So what could go wrong? What happens? So what if they interact? What's the problem? It's not like drugs, they don't affect biological systems. They don't affect the patient directly. So what's the problem? Well, anywhere that AI is used in medicine, in clinical decision support, for example, if it's not working properly, that means it could lead to a decision error. If it's optimizing care, if it's optimizing, let's say, staffing levels, and it gets it wrong, then we have waste. It could prolong waiting times for procedures because it's used to optimize queues. And when it's not working, there's more applications. These are just examples, but a lot of things can go wrong because we rely on all these, on AI for all these different applications. So let's look for a minute at some work that we've been doing it evidently. Nowadays, when we talk about AI, we're most of the time talking about some neural network, some deep neural network that is illustrated here as a very small piece, but usually will have hundreds of thousands of nodes, if not millions. We use it for training, we use it for prediction, and then we use reinforcement over time to make it better. Now, what we have been doing, we've been adding a step of segmentation to this, and we're calling this Agile AI. So the segmentation means we look at the data and we break it up into smaller and smaller chunks. And each one of those is an AI, so it has the same process through it. But there's so many of them, and because we look at healthcare data and it's got so many variations in it, that we break it down like this to try to customize each AI to reach a very high precision, to customize each AI to that segment of the data. And so when the segments are so small, we have so many AIs that we can no longer manage them manually. And so we've got another algorithm that manages all that AI. So in a typical data transformation like we do, we could have hundreds of AI running, and they're all created, trained, and retrained automatically or semi-automatically. And that sort of approach, we can think of this as an AI team, as a team of different AI that are working in a coordinated manner. So they're interacting, they're definitely interacting, those AI, but they're doing that in a controlled and a desirable manner, where they divide the work amongst themselves, rather than like if they come from different vendors and they become unpredictable in that way. So for that, this is really what, to me, MCBK is the opportunity. It's the computable knowledge part that makes it an opportunity for AI to speak to each other. And what I'm about to suggest is, again, based on work we're doing at Evidently, but hopefully this will have a wider audience, and MCBK can really get behind this. This is a tool for all of MCBK. And don't forget, yeah, so one of the things that when we talk about AI teams is really it's not just the AI working, right? It's working in an environment where there's clinicians and patients and carers and administrators, and all of those need to interact with this knowledge as well to supervise, to make sure that it's behaving properly. So this is why we've created Evidence Hub. Evidence Hub is a website or a repository for computable knowledge. It's using it provides that knowledge as objects that are open source. Those computable knowledge objects have MIME types. So as you can see on the right, there's analytics, and ingestion workflows, and value sets, and cohort definitions, and so on. These are all MIME types that define the kind of object this is. There's metadata. I'll look into those in more detail. So the metadata is information that primarily is there to put the object in context of other objects. So, for example, it has keywords and URLs and permalinks that make it findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. There's a human readable description that is generated by well, in our case, it's actually generated automatically, but it's provided as part of the object. There's an owner and contributor that roles in the object. These are the people who are able to moderate comments and revisions of this object. There's relationships. This one object could include other objects. It could be an analytic workflow that uses a outcome measure or a cohort definition, and that outcome measure or cohort definition could be using a value set and so on. And so they could be nested, they could be branches of each other. And so there's also version control, timestamps. You can go back in history and see the evolution of the object. So the payload of the object is next. That's really the source code of it. And you can, it's got this tree structure, but you can drill it down, and the source code is right here. There's comments. So this is a discussion, and the idea here is that, unlike with the traditional peer-reviewed journals that we know, we don't need to have objects that are reviewed by 2 reviewers once when the object is published and then have it public forever. The reviews could be constant. People could be making these discussions or criticizing and asking questions. It is a moderated discussion, but it's moderated by the owner. And if the owner is not cooperating, though, it is open source, and you can create a branch of this object, create a copy under your own name, and then you can make changes and manage it yourself if you like. So it's an open source principle. We do another verification before, just checking for spam before we even give it to the owner to moderate. But it's and the reason we do it like that, we don't want it to turn into Reddit. We really want it to be civil discourse. So then, how do AI interact with this? There's a RESTful API, and they can self-register They can register new MIME types, and they can register to handle existing MIME types. And there's three kinds of handling. You can register as a viewer, as an editor, an executor. Executors can have an open in the application object. So if you're viewing an object, you logged in through a handler, a registered handler, you'll get a button that says, open this in my application. So, and that really simplifies, so you can immediately download, bring it into your environment and interact with that object, either execute it or do whatever. But the important, I think we've been using this to share knowledge objects that are relevant to our research platform. So these are more research oriented objects, but you can register anything you like here. You can register objects that are decision support rules and can be used in real time. And in other words, this becomes a workspace or a repository where knowledge is kept, and AI can go and inquire it and look at the MIME types, look at descriptions of the MIME types, and understand how they need to interact with them. Of course, there's work to be done on the AI side to make this possible or to use that information, but at least we have that information already. And I'm actually looking forward to see this new age of AI that it can form teams with other AIs that have not been built to work together necessarily, but they can discover each other along the way. Another feature that we will add, this is not available yet, but is what we call a badge. And here we're looking for collaborators. If you're interested in this, then please reach out. We're looking for people who are trusted badge awarders, and they can have their own badge. An example of a badge would be a journal editor who can assign badges to particular objects, and those badges are also cross-linked to the paper that they published in their journal about this object, and so they become cross-linked. So you have the paper linking to the object and the object linking to the paper. Again, there's anti-spam and antivirus detection on that as well, but these are given to people who have already registered themselves, individuals or organizations. Okay, so quite, I think, quick on time, but that's because we wanted to have more time for discussion. We're going to have more AI. It's going to create more interactions. We cannot predict those interactions, but we can plan for those interactions, even if we can't predict them. We need to do this now. This is where, if we don't want this to be another of those too late questions in a couple of years, we need to act now. There's infrastructure being set up by Evidently, but by others as well. And we should take advantage of that and work out how AIs can interact with each other through sharing knowledge, forming teams, forming unified decision support or unified applications that can take into account multiple AI and have in a constructive manner rather than in an adverse event manner. All right. Thank you. That's if you want to reach out to me, my email is on the invitation. And I'd like to open this for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Guy. And we already have some questions coming in. So Gunesh Koru has written, Guy, thank you for the great presentation. He has two questions. One, is there any metadata held to express the expected behavior? For example, what output types and value ranges can be expected? It can facilitate the peer review for example, the LHS journal and assignment of the badges you mentioned. Why don't you answer that, and then I'll give you the second question.
Sure. Yes, thank you, Ganesh. I think we need to start somewhere. These are very good questions, and I think actually looking forward to the future where that kind of metadata is made a bit more standardized and more understood, but I think we need to start somewhere, which is by sharing that knowledge first, and having a repository for communication. So when we do see that, what sort of information, what sort of outputs are out there, we can put it all in one place and start making decisions about how you describe outputs. And then it's the same for the objects themselves. We can start having, as part of the standard representation of objects, also these standard representations of how they behave or what they're for and what outputs they provide. But the same also for the badges. The badges that's why they're different. So some of the badges will be individualized, and some organization can have multiple badges to say, this is one I endorse, but I don't link to, or this is one that I endorse and link to. But the badges are more like, are meant to be more like endorsements rather than have a more functional role. I think, I mean, this could all change, of course. There's new ideas, I'd love to see them, but that's how I see it at the moment.
But let me ask a follow-up question to that. Do you see the badges more like likes on Facebook, where people who are authorized badgers would affix a badge, and there'd presumably be a lot of these badgers, so you could an app or a model could pile them up? Or do you see a smaller number of badgers, and with the idea that one badge is enough because these badgers are certified and presumably know what they're doing?
Right. These are good questions. I don't know the answer. At the moment, I'm thinking of it more of as the latter. There'll be a small number of approved badgers, but we don't want to be approvers either. So we don't think that as a commercial company we should be the ones approving, but we would like to collaborate with more not-for-profit or academic institutions to manage that process. And then it's going to be up to that institution to really tell us how it should be done.
Okay, let me, in the interest of diversification here, let me put Gunesh's second question on hold and go to the second question. Gunesh, I apologize, we'll come back to it, but I want to jump to a different theme here from this second question. Skipping ethical, regulatory, and evaluation considerations seems a tad risky. How will editors and others determine that whether AI is worthy of a badge?
That's a very good question. To be honest, I don't know at the moment. However, going back to those questions at the beginning, that it's probably too late to ask. It is risky. You're right. I wouldn't say it's a tad risky. It's very risky to bypass regulation, but we're doing it already. So, and it does actually have a parallel in the biochemical world, where we have supplements that are regulated differently, or food is not regulated at all, but it still has the same effects as drugs sometimes, and it could be just as dangerous. It could interact with drugs, as we know, with statins and grapefruit. and grapefruit are not regulated, right? So there is already a risk there. The same thing is going on with AI at the moment. AI that is general in nature, like ChatGPT, is not subjected to regulation because it's not advertised to be of use for particular indications for particular patients. It's not a decision support system. It's already happening. Yeah, so it is risky, but it is happening. So how would going back to the badges and how would they determine well, it depends on who they are, and it could be just the editorial soundness of this object, that it's well described, without vouching for its correctness. Just like we have with journal editors that vouch for papers. They don't vouch for the work being correct. They just vouch for the paper being written sufficiently well that people can understand what was done. So it's the same idea. It's more of an editorial role rather than a regulatory role.
Okay, Jody Wax asks if you can share the web link to Evidence Hub.
Yeah, I will, but we're still working on a couple of last-minute quirks to it. We actually had a beta program last year, and we had a lot of changes to make since then as a consequence. And so we took it down, we've redone it. We will publish this in a week or two. We just have a couple of issues that we want to make sure that it's good when we launch it, that you have a good experience.
Okay, well, maybe we'll put them on the MCBK website. We'll put it there when it's ready. Okay, so Gunesh's second question, you mentioned these objects are GPL'd, but it can restrict the opportunities for those who want to pursue entrepreneurship. Would you consider more flexible licenses?
Yeah, I think one of the lessons we learned, we thought if we make it open, everybody's happy. But we actually found from the beta program, and actually responses to the paper we published at the Journal of Learning Health Systems, that some people actually prefer a more commercial model so they can sell their knowledge objects rather than give them away for free, and that will actually encourage people to create more knowledge objects and make them usable. So that's something we're looking at, but that's going to be a kind of a second in the next version. It's at the moment we just want to have a smooth launch, and when we do, yeah, absolutely, we will look into this, and love to get suggestions on this.
We're generating a lot of questions here, so there's a lot of interest. You don't mention the implicit and explicit values and methods of the various AI components. How can we rationally evaluate how they'll operate together if they're so different?
The answer is that's exactly right. We don't know, but we know what we don't know. So we do know that they will interact. We can be sure of that. We do know that there's going to be a lot of them, and that we probably at some point would need to think up ways that AIs will interact with each other, and we're going to need experience with that. We just need to recognize that we're at the moment where we are is a bit infantile phase of AI adoption, and we just need to have our eyes wide open to ways that they're interacting, document them, and then try to come up with generalization. Right? We just don't have the data. So yeah, absolutely. And the reason I'm here today is really to point it out and to say let's start learning about this topic. Because it's going to be, like drug-drug interactions are probably the first thing you learn if you're a pharmacist, that they exist. Probably what you think about the most if you're a pharmacist. Well, I'm not a pharmacist and I don't know this, but this is what I think. It's going to be the same thing if you're an adopter or a creator of AI. one of the things you're going to need to consider are going to be how it interacts with other AIs and other health systems. And again, as a software developer, we already do this, right? When we develop software now for a hospital, we have to think about what other systems are in that hospital. At the moment, those systems are relatively simple in that, you know, it's an EHR, it's predictable, we know how it's going to behave, or a billing system, we know how it's going to behave. But when we need to think about, okay, what do these systems do when we're not sure how they're going to behave? So it's the same principle, but we need to keep our eyes open. It's going to take a different turn when it comes to AI.
Another question. Are we tiring you out?
No, I'm
Okay.
excited.
Doing okay.
It's great.
Okay. Should the metadata include the compatible or incompatible host applications for AI tools or modules?
At the moment, the way we think about it is that the MIME type defines that. So if you have a MIME type, it's just like you have a file type, like a JPEG on your computer, and you can have multiple different applications that handle it. We think that the MIME type will have to encompass that. And the MIME type could be as elaborate, might include version information. So what version applications can handle it? Or it could be versions of the MIME type. We're not sure yet, but the way it's structured right now, I mean, it could be that there's more metadata than needs to be and more than can be captured in a single handle, like a MIME type, but the MIME type is really there to tell you what you can and cannot do with this object.
Okay. Following your drug analogy, do you anticipate a thalidomide-like event occurring with AI?
Yeah, I think absolutely. So I think the way we regulate AI, when we do regulate AI, it's under software as a medical device rules usually, and it goes through trials and testing just like drugs. And if they're used in the real world differently to how they were used in the trial, which is definitely going to happen if it's not already happening, then yeah, we will discover only post-market that certain AIs become dangerous and they have adverse events that are undesired. We might handle it a bit better, hopefully. I think a big part of the thalidomide story is actually how it was handled. Hopefully we have a more mature way of handling it at the time that this does happen, and we can, you know, rather than just saying this is completely out, but just say, okay, let's create counter indications, and let's not give the manufacturer all the reasons to deny those or to try to hide those adverse events, but work with the community to rectify them. So yeah, absolutely. I think the short answer is absolutely.
We'll see if that person follows up, maybe. Okay, another question. The absence of architectural details is worrisome. How, as a CMIO, do I access these AI resources in real time and make them available in the context of the EHR and the clinical workflow?
Well, that's I think it's a good question, but it's a little bit out of scope for me, because we're talking about a platform where people and AI can interact with each other. So that's why there's a discussion side, there's a description side. These are all human readable, and I do think that that's a key component, is that humans can actually supervise and have transparency and how these objects are structured. But how does the AI interact with your health system, with healthcare delivery? That is up to the AI vendors themselves. That's we don't and cannot dictate that, because this would be, we don't want to stifle the innovation, I think, and we don't want to limit what sort of applications you're allowed or not allowed to use AI for. So The system is open. It's going to be subject to innovation. It's going to be very dependent on where the future takes us. Some of it we just have to wait and see. Again, we don't know exactly, but we know that these things are coming, and we know that we don't know them yet. But we will find out for sure. So I wish I could answer this question better, but that's all we know right now.
Yeah, and I think it's a great question, but if I can editorialize on your response, the whole theme of your talk is that this is already here. We have to jump in and begin to figure these things out. And this just adds to the list of things that we need to figure out.
That's right.
Maybe there is we can speculate, and it would be an interesting conversation. But it goes. You're providing us with a long list of things we have to figure out, but we need an environment in which the figuring out can take place.
That's right.
Okay, moving along.
We've got to start that cycle. Yeah.
Where in the model development, pilot, implementation pipeline would you anticipate that this platform would be most useful?
Well, hopefully throughout. I would imagine that the impact of it will be AIs interacting with each other at implementation, right? In real time, during implementation, or almost real time. That means that they also need to interact in the earlier stages. So the AI needs to be written to interact with that system, and it needs to be tested. Its interactions need to be tested as part of its development. So it's throughout the life cycle of the AI. And part of it is that there's new AI that's coming all the time. So it will need to do that even post-implementation. It will need to know if there's one AI that's recommending staffing should be lowered because there's less load, and there's another AI that can say, well, load is coming up. Maybe we should have those two talk to each other so that they can predict the right staffing level, for example. And that needs to be, and that's one time. And then later it's the same thing for inventory, for consumable. So it's hard to predict that at development time. And I think that's part of the point, is that at development time of the AI, it's very hard to predict what it will need to know. And so this is where AI needs to be, this is where we need guidelines. We need, there's a lot of work to be done here. This is by no ways, I'm not presenting a solution, I'm presenting a problem that I want to raise awareness for so that we can prepare for it, we can together come up with a solution. But it's throughout the life cycle. And I don't think there's one point where we can say this is what it's for, or yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully, again, I'm sorry for not answering these questions better, but you're asking for solutions that I don't have. So, yeah. Well, thank you for those questions, though. These are good.
Well, you're provoking a lot of thought. I mean, this is about something that's very, very new on the one hand, but already upon us on the other. It's a bit of a frightening prospect. All right, Joe Bormel asks, today you described AI management in a multi-agent environment. Does this platform relate to Evidently's AI-based OMOP data quality and loading capabilities?
Yes and no. So obviously it's part of Evidently's offering, and our research platform, our research automation platform, Piano, definitely makes use of this. It's used to get, so Piano is a research automation platform that uses AI. It's installed in customer environments, so it's where it goes to the data. It doesn't bring the data to it. It's not like a SaaS. And those different instances of Piano then talk to each other through this collaboration platform. Although the AI, the agile AI that I described before, where all these AIs are generated and running in a coordinated fashion, this is all happening on one site. So there's some information that's being shared. I wouldn't say that at the moment it's being shared by AI, although some information from the AI can be shared. We're actually a little bit concerned, for example, sharing data models. We're concerned about training data leakage, and so we're not doing that yet. But it's certainly something we're looking at and would like to do. So yeah, that is the aim of it. Yeah, that is the aim of having this platform in the first place.
So I'm looking in the chat. There are no questions in the chat, but and we've run through the excellent questions of the Q&A. I'm going to put something out there for you to respond to, and this is a bit meta. So let's suppose we have a registry of models, and in this registry contains all of the standardized metadata about each model, and you can think of these as a set of metadata fields, each comprising a column of a flat data set, and each model comprising a row. Okay. Now, if some of that metadata was biological in nature, and this wouldn't even require AI, but could we identify, by virtue of biological action commonalities, AI applications that are more likely to interact with each other, just like your methotrexate example through the kidney, that are more likely to interact with each other? It wouldn't be perfectly sensitive, nor would it be perfectly specific, but it might identify before they occur significant AI interactions that we should be aware of.
Yeah, you know, I would love to say yes to this, but I think the answer is no. There's a couple of reasons. One, actually, just like in the drug example I gave, if you were to describe which biological systems each drug works on, one would describe the kidneys and one would describe the immune system, and you wouldn't necessarily understand this interaction. That's the point, is that we don't actually know what those interactions are going to be beforehand. So to do that could be helpful, but it's saying we know of this particular kind of interaction that could happen. And so we can look at there first as an optimization step, but we can't make this, you know, restricted to only those interactions that we know are going to happen, because that's the point, is that we need to work in this area in this uncertain environment where we don't know what the AI is going to do, and we need to treat them as unknowns in a way, or unpredictable in a way. And it's yeah, I mean, it's a good optimization idea, but it's not. I don't think it can be a restriction on the system on AI developers. You don't need to look for things that are outside that sort of biological system you look for. Sure, it could give you some early warnings, might make it faster, but if you're looking across, we need to search for not just we need to search across everything, and maybe part of it is actually part of the solution is to specify every system that your AI could be interacting with, so that people can search and find interactions better. I think with this is maybe the chemists in the room will correct me, but I think this is probably easier to do in an artificial environment like AI than it is in a chemistry environment. It's more natural rather than man-made, but it's I'm not sure. I think that the AI in a multi-vendor environment is going to be just as unpredictable as any biological system, as any other complex system, and that's going to be the really the environment we need to operate in. Is that we don't know how these things will behave, but we need to prepare for them behaving in ways that interact with each other, that don't have the desired outcomes, that have outcomes that are not desired, and just need to figure out how to do this, how to be prepared for that. Yeah, again, not all of this is new, right? As software developers, we're trying to predict how our software is going to fail all the time. We debug it and we fix it up to make sure it doesn't happen. But when our software starts to depend on things that we don't fully understand, then we need to write it in a robust way that can be prepared for that.
Right, it's
You
NPR,
can look at it
right?
that way.
Okay, well, we have gone through all of the excellent questions that have been posted. I've asked you some maybe not so excellent questions.
Mhm.
But I
Very
appreciate
good
your
question.
answer to them. And we thank you for getting up at 6 a.m. to do this presentation. I really think it's been excellent, and you are getting kudos. You were getting kudos from the audience on the chat. So we're now going to just preview some future events. There is going to be a next MCBK global webinar on May 16th by Dr. Brian Chapman, another one of our Australian colleagues. And I hope the title stimulates your curiosity. And if you're a very curious person, the title may be all you need to motivate you to attend this presentation. But we're going to add a short explanation that unpacks what epistemic means in this context. And for those of you who would appreciate having that, I hope after you read it, you will be more motivated or highly motivated to attend Dr. Chapman's presentation next month. And I also want to announce that there is now a date for the next global meeting of MCBK. It will be October 22nd and 23rd in the Americas and Europe, and that's going to correspond to the 23rd and 24th in Asia and Australia primarily. We're going to have the same format where there will be sessions repeated for those in each of those two global zones. So mark your calendars for those dates. The meeting, like meetings in the past, will be free and virtual. And we look forward to sending you more information soon. Nor are there other slides. Just thank you for attending. MCBK info is your place for asking questions about MCBK, for getting more information about upcoming events. And I want to thank Noor Khan and Janelle Burley, our staff here in Michigan, for running this event and keeping everything working so well. Thank you again for coming. Guy, thank you again for your presentation. It was truly excellent, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, and
Bye.
thanks everyone for coming.